Grandma, it's hot in here. Can you let me out of the room? Little Zoe pleaded. No way. I'm going shopping now. You stay here and watch the house, her grandmother replied curtly. My daughter tried to leave the room with her grandmother, but was roughly shoved back inside. Zoe, who's 5, usually goes to daycare, but on Sundays when my husband Asher and I both have to work, we have no choice but to rely on my mother-in-law to watch her. However, it seemed that even though Grandma had agreed to take Zoe, she had no real intention of properly looking after her. The room Grandma had pushed Zoe into was formerly used by Asher. These days it has become a cluttered storage space with nothing for a child to play with. On top of that, the room was on the second floor with a large window that made it stuffy even when open. That day, a heat stroke alert had been issued, and the closed room was over 95 degrees Fahrenheit. After shoving Zoe into that sweltering space, Grandma gleefully grabbed the air conditioning remote. Time to save on the electricity bill, she declared, switching off the AC without any hesitation. She slammed the door shut and blocked it with a stack of magazines to prevent Zoe from getting out. My name is Amelia, I'm 32 years old. My husband Asher is 3 years older than me. We live in an apartment near his parents' house with our 5-year-old daughter Zoe. My father-in-law passed away less than a year after Zoe was born. So now it's just my mother-in-law and sister-in-law Penelope living there. Penelope had been living on her own in her 20s, but moved back home to look after her mother when her father died. Since Penelope and I are close in age, we get along like real sisters. While my relationship with Penelope is good and we see each other regularly, the same can't be said for my mother-in-law and me. You see, she dotes excessively on her own son and daughter, and seems to resent me out of jealousy for stealing away Asher by marrying him. When I got pregnant, the moment she found out the baby was a girl, she made an unpleasant face. Why is it a girl? I was planning to spoil a grandson rotten, now I'm just disappointed, she complained loudly enough for the baby in my belly to hear. I was so shocked I couldn't say anything back. Asher scolded her, saying, Mom, we're adding a new member to the family, why would you say something like that? It's your first grandchild, the gender doesn't matter. But she just pouted without showing any remorse. When Penelope heard about it later, she came to visit and apologized. Amelia, I'm so sorry for the horrible things Mom said. Because of incidents like this in the past, my mother-in-law treats not just me but even little Zoe like a nuisance. Asher and Penelope call her out on her attitude toward us every time, but she refuses to listen and never changes. Since Asher and I both work, there are times we have to leave Zoe with Grandma. But given her daily attitude, I can't fully trust Grandma to look after her. Not only does she dislike Zoe, but Asher told me about how before we were married, she almost killed their dog by leaving it in a room with the AC off in the middle of summer. Luckily, Grandpa noticed right away and rushed the dog to the hospital. It barely survived and later passed of old age. Apparently, even after Grandpa harshly scolded her, Grandma didn't seem to show genuine remorse. So I constantly worry she'll do something awful again, even if unintentionally. It's the dead of summer now. This heat is tough even for adults, so of course 5-year-old Zoe needs air conditioning. That's why whenever I leave her at the in-laws' place during summer, I always tell them to make sure the AC is on in her room. Even though it could be too late if something happens, Grandma always makes snide remarks like, "Ugh, what a waste of electricity," while looking annoyed. It makes me feel small every time. Penelope stands up for me against Grandma's comments. "Mom, don't say things like that to Amelia. AC in the summer isn't a waste, right? If everyone is in the same room, one unit is enough. Besides, you leave lights and appliances on all the time even when not using them. Just yesterday the TV was on when no one was watching. The bathroom and changing room lights are always left on after showers. If you're going to lecture others about saving power, be more careful yourself." I had heard about Grandma's bad habits too, but it doesn't look like she'll be fixing them anytime soon. While Grandma grumbles under her breath, Penelope happily agrees to watch Zoe, which I really appreciate. Penelope has an office job but rarely works overtime. She's very proactive about caring for Zoe. That said, Zoe has been going to daycare since she was 3, so we don't ask them to babysit very often. We try to avoid relying on them because of Grandma, but sometimes Asher and I both end up working late depending on the time of year, or get called in suddenly on our days off. On those Sundays when daycare is closed, we have no choice but to ask the in-laws for help. One Sunday in July, Asher and I both had work come up and had to go to our respective offices. Asher is well aware that his mother doesn't think highly of Zoe and me, and he's always considerate about it. But that day, we had no option but to have Grandma look after Zoe. "Be a good girl at Grandma's house, okay?" I said, stroking Zoe's hair after seeing Asher off since he had to leave first. "Okay, Mommy, I understand." Zoe nodded obediently, but didn't try to look up at Grandma. She's always been a child who doesn't make much fuss, but watching her little back as she walked inside, submissively following my words, left me with an unsettled feeling. Even at her young age, I think Zoe senses that Grandma dislikes her, which pains my heart. "Mother, I'm very sorry about this. I'll finish up work as quickly as I can and come pick up Zoe. Also, there's a heat advisory today, so please be careful and stay hydrated. Turn the AC on a bit early. Zoe, make sure you drink your tea too, okay? It's been scorching hot these past days, with today being especially sweltering. You'd think Grandma wouldn't skimp on the AC in this heat, but when I made a point to remind her, she made an openly sour face. I get it already. Geez, having to watch that child in this awful heat. I wish you'd think about my circumstances a little too, she grumbled overtly, looking put upon. I'm very sorry, I apologized and bowed my head, resolving to finish my tasks and pick up Zoe as soon as possible. I bid farewell to the in-laws and left. However, I would soon come to regret not being more alert to the risks of Grandma's attitude. 3 hours after dropping off Zoe, as I headed to the in-laws' place after completing my work, my cell phone rang. The call was from Zoe. Before leaving her with them, I had given her a kid's phone just in case something happened. Hello, Zoe. I answered immediately, feeling an ominous premonition. Mommy. Her voice sounded faint and frightened. When are you coming to get me? I'm on my way now. I'll be there very soon, just wait a bit longer, I assured her. As I walked, I tried to encourage her over the phone. Mommy, please hurry, Zoe urged, sounding oddly frantic. Something seemed off. When I asked if anything was wrong, she fell silent. Just as I started to wonder if Grandma had done something to her, Zoe pleaded in a tearful voice, Mommy, help me. Realizing this was serious, I rushed to the in-laws' house without getting more details from Zoe. When I arrived and went inside, Grandma was nowhere to be seen. She must have gone out shopping. But Zoe's shoes were at the entrance, so she had to be home. She wasn't on the first floor, so I went upstairs. There I noticed a pile of magazines blocking a door. This was the room Asher used to use when he still lived at home. Getting a bad feeling, I quickly moved the magazines and opened the door. What I saw next left me in shock. A while later, Grandma returned home in high spirits. It had been 4 hours since I dropped off Zoe. Seeing the ambulance parked in front of the house and someone being loaded inside, Grandma's expression changed in an instant. What in the world is going on here? She shrieked. With a furious look on her face, she ran over to where Asher and I were waiting by the ambulance. Zoe was with us too, so our family of 3 was all together. Grandma shoved past us and yelled loudly at the ambulance, Penelope. Oh no, what happened to her? That's right, the person who had just been carried into the ambulance was my sister-in-law Penelope. She was limp and unresponsive to Grandma's cries, clearly unconscious. Why is it Penelope and not Zoe? Grandma glared at Zoe, who was clinging to me, still not fully comprehending the situation. I was filled with rage at Grandma's attitude and tried to retort, but Asher stepped in front of her first. I knew it was your doing, Mom. What? What are you talking about? Grandma averted her eyes, feigning ignorance at Asher's questioning. Don't play dumb, Mother. We know you turned off the AC and locked Zoe in that room, I confronted her. Realizing she was in trouble, Grandma faltered. Well, that's, I had just heard from Zoe what happened. Despite Zoe's protests, Grandma intentionally shut her in the upstairs room and turned off the AC using the remote. The second floor gets hotter than the first, and a closed room can exceed 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Grandma must have known what would happen to a 5-year-old trapped in those conditions. This went beyond mere bullying, it sent a chill down my spine. Ignoring Zoe's pleas about the heat and not wanting to stay in that room, Grandma left her there and went shopping. Fortunately, Zoe was all right. Grandma thought she had turned off the AC in Zoe's room, but she actually turned off the unit in the adjacent room by mistake. She must have mixed up the remotes. Grandma is always careless with appliances and never puts things back. We found the living room TV remote in her room before, and even the AC remote in her car. She carelessly uses the remotes for adjacent rooms and doesn't return them, leading to this mix-up. The other room belonged to Penelope. Because the AC got turned off, Penelope ended up in that sweltering room while she was sleeping and got a heat stroke. When the paramedics said they needed someone to ride along to the hospital, Grandma was the first to volunteer. But Asher strongly objected. Who do you think caused this? Grandma cowered at her son's shouting, and Asher used that chance to get in the ambulance. Watching this, Grandma started wailing loudly with tears streaming down her face. Penelope, stay strong. Oh, how could this happen? I wish Zoe had gotten a heat stroke instead. Unable to tolerate Grandma's self-centered remarks any longer, my anger peaked. But before I could scold her, one of the paramedics reprimanded Grandma. That's enough. You knew what would happen if you turned off the AC in this scorching heat. Why don't you take this life-threatening situation more seriously? Reflect on your actions. Mind your own business. I wasn't trying to kill anyone. I put the remote in that brat's room where it belongs. Even getting told off by the paramedic, Grandma remained defiant, leaving me speechless. I realized that no matter what I said to this woman, it would be pointless. At the same time, I felt I could never forgive Grandma for her lack of remorse. After seeing off the ambulance with Penelope and Asher, I decided to take Zoe and go back to my parents' house. Unable to ride in the ambulance, Grandma apparently went to the hospital on her own later. Penelope was fortunately in no mortal danger. She got an 4 drip and recovered enough to be discharged the next day. I was relieved to hear there would be no lasting effects. Right after getting that news, Grandma summoned me and Zoe to come over. Asher also seemed to have a lot on his mind regarding his mother, so the 3 of us headed to the in-laws together. After that whole fiasco, I really didn't want to bring Zoe if possible, but I couldn't leave a 5-year-old home alone. I was sure Grandma would make snide remarks again, but I was determined to protect Zoe with all my might no matter what she said. As soon as we arrived, Grandma started yelling at me, ordering me to apologize to Penelope. None of this would have happened if you hadn't dumped Zoe on us. It's your fault, so apologize to Penelope right now. Grandma made this absurd demand. I was flabbergasted at the sheer audacity of her blame shifting. Mother, please don't yell. You're scaring Zoe, I calmly admonished. But Grandma's face turned beet red. Shut up. Ugh, this is the worst. I don't even want to look at that brat. If she had died of heat stroke, maybe I could have had a grandson next. She lashed out at Zoe with cruel words, consumed by anger. How could you say that? I couldn't help yelling back at Grandma while hugging Zoe protectively. Caught off guard by my rebuttal, Grandma faltered for a moment. But the next instant, she was glowering at us with a sour expression. Don't you talk back to me, you insolent daughter-in-law. Hurry up and apologize. At that moment, Penelope interjected. What are you saying? Stop it already. She stood in front of Grandma as if to shield me. The only reason I didn't end up in worse condition is because Zoe called Amelia for help on the phone. If Amelia hadn't come and called an ambulance then, who knows how much more serious it could have gotten. Penelope glared at Grandma, trembling with intense indignation. I had never seen her this angry before. Grandma seemed equally taken aback. She looked dazed after being suddenly yelled at by the daughter she doted on. When Zoe begged for my help over the phone, I panicked and rushed to pick her up as soon as I heard she was locked in a room. However, there were a few points in Zoe's story that didn't add up. Namely, that Grandma had operated some kind of remote in front of her, and that Zoe heard a loud noise from the adjacent room. I figured the remote was for turning off the AC, but that didn't explain why Zoe was comfortably spending time in an air-conditioned room. Then when Zoe mentioned hearing a loud noise next door, it hit me. Could Grandma have accidentally turned off the AC in the wrong room? Earlier, Penelope had mentioned that she finally had a day off. Could that noise have been Penelope crying for help? With that hunch, I instructed Zoe over the phone. Zoe, press the blue button on the remote. When I rushed to the in-laws' place, I found Zoe locked in the room and immediately let her out. In the adjacent room, Penelope was sprawled on the floor, her body burning up. I called an ambulance. While waiting for it to arrive, I gave Penelope some water and asked what happened. Apparently, work had been so busy lately that Penelope hadn't been getting much sleep. So on this rare Sunday off, she had slept in deeply. By the time the stifling heat woke her up, she already had a heat stroke. Even when she tried to call for help on her phone charging across the room, nausea and dizziness made it hard to move. The AC remote that should have been in the room was missing. She managed to get up but collapsed after falling out of bed, passing out. The noise Zoe heard was Penelope falling. Fortunately, since I had Zoe press the AC button and some time had passed, the room temperature was starting to drop. However, being trapped in a 95 degrees Fahrenheit sealed room for a while had made Penelope's heat stroke severe. If Zoe hadn't heard that sound, I wouldn't have noticed Penelope's presence. In the worst case, she might have died just like that. The thought sent chills down my spine. Even I nearly died as an adult, and you locked a little kid in a room like that. Don't you get that it's unacceptable no matter who it is? You're the one who should apologize for trying to kill Zoe. Consider yourself lucky you're not being sued for attempted murder. Penelope berated Grandma with tears in her eyes, but Grandma remained silent. She just kept repeating, but, well, without any intention of apologizing. Penelope gave her an icy stare. Enough. I've been living with you since Dad died because I was worried about you, but I'm at my limit. I'll never forgive you for this, and more than anything, I'm too scared to keep living together. I'm moving out soon, Penelope declared. Only then did Grandma's expression change. What are you saying? I've always cherished you and Asher, you're both my precious family. She turned pale and shrieked. And who nearly killed that precious family? Penelope confronted Grandma, but Grandma had a hysterical fit and slammed the table. Asher's voice trembled with anger as he asked Grandma, "Our family isn't just us, is it? Are you saying Amelia and Zoe aren't your family?" In response to Asher's question, Grandma snorted defiantly and looked at me with a mocking smile. That's right, of course not. That daughter-in-law and that grandkid of yours aren't related to me by blood, she said. Her words made me realize that to her, Zoe and I were never family to begin with. Strangely, it wasn't that much of a shock. I could understand about me, but Zoe is her grandchild, so there is a blood connection. I didn't feel like bothering to correct her though. Penelope seemed to feel the same. She let out a deep sigh and stared at Grandma expressionlessly. It's pointless to say anything, so whatever. I'm packing my things and leaving right away, so you can handle everything else on your own from now on, Penelope stated firmly. At that, Grandma became half-crazed, wailing and clinging to Penelope's arm. No, don't decide that on your own. You're going to keep living here with me forever. You're the one deciding things on your own. Isn't it about time you let go of your kids? I'm cutting ties with you for good. Don't ever involve yourself with me again. Penelope's mind was made up. She shook off Grandma, rejecting her. No way. Penelope. The shock must have been too much for Grandma. She let out a scream and rushed out of the house in a frenzy. I found out later that she had gone around the neighborhood portraying herself as the victim, spreading rumors that everything was my fault. The next day, while our family was out together, Grandma called. As soon as I picked up, she started yelling at an ear-splitting volume that made me want to hang up immediately. Before I could ask what she wanted, Grandma launched into a story about something that happened that day. Apparently, the circuit breaker at the in-laws' place had been tripped without anyone noticing, spoiling all the food in the fridge. The freezer contents had melted too, creating a huge mess. On top of that, the drama Grandma had been looking forward to didn't get recorded, and she angrily decided I must be the culprit. It was you, wasn't it? How far are you going to take this harassment? Even when I denied it, saying, no, I have no idea. The TV was on normally when we left yesterday, right? We haven't been over since then, so there's no way I could have done it. Grandma kept accusing me of doing it. You and Zoe are such pests. Hurry up and divorce Asher already. You and Zoe should live far away somewhere. Beside herself, Grandma went on a tirade and even demanded a divorce. I could tolerate being bad-mouthed myself, but what in the world did Zoe ever do to this woman? She arbitrarily decided Asher was stolen from her, arbitrarily got jealous, and now she has the gall to demand a divorce. How self-centered can she be? I was dying to yell back at her, but we were in a crowded place. Not wanting to inconvenience my family and the people around us, I took a deep breath to calm down for the moment. Then I calmly stated, I cherish Asher from the bottom of my heart, so I intend to keep living with him and Zoe. Don't selfishly tell me to get divorced. I added, you may be Asher's mother, but I don't want anything to do with someone who deliberately makes others suffer, and told her not to involve herself with us at all going forward. Still, Grandma kept shrieking things like, what are you deciding on your own, in a shrill voice. I was about to just hang up on her, but before I could, a hand reached over from the side and took my phone. It was Penelope who snatched my phone and started talking to Grandma. Hello, Mom. It's Penelope. Actually, I'm the one who tripped the breaker for you. It saved on the electric bill, right? My sister-in-law began to explain with a bright smile. Penelope, why? Grandma's voice was so loud, I could hear what she was saying even without putting my ear to the receiver. She voiced her bewilderment as to why Penelope was with me and why she would do something like shut off the house's power. Toward Grandma, Penelope said, I warned you so many times about leaving unused lights and appliances on, didn't I? And yet you boss others around about saving power. Even when I was moving out, you left the TV and bathroom lights on. I told you I'd shut everything off since it's wasteful, remember? You said it was fine. So I turned it all off. It conserves electricity, so it's all good, right? She grinned with a refreshed expression. How could you? That's not okay at all the food got ruined. This can't be fixed. Penelope, come back home right now. It's no big deal. Just buy new stuff, right? Maybe you'll even get better ingredients next time. Saving electricity is more important to you than people's lives, so I helped you out. Well, whatever, I'm done. Bye. I won't contact you again, but take care. Penelope could still hear Grandma screaming, but she ignored it and ended the call. Sorry for talking so long, she apologized as she handed my phone back. I shook my head. No, that was really refreshing, I replied. It's about boarding time, right? Have a good time over there. It's still gonna be hot for a while, so take care of yourself, I continued. Penelope nodded with a smile. She was moving far away today. Our family of 3 had come to the airport to see her off. Apparently, Penelope had decided a while ago to get away from her overprotective mother. She chose a distant place beyond Grandma's reach. Penelope's face was beaming as she set off for her new home, and we saw her off with smiles. Since then, Penelope and I keep in touch from time to time to update each other. She seems to be enjoying life in her new location and living energetically every day. Right after Penelope left, we moved to and started our new life. We didn't tell Grandma our new address and blocked her number to cut ties, which has made things much more pleasant. Asher had also been quite fed up with Grandma's excessive doting, but couldn't bring himself to push her away before since she was his mother. However, he said he decided to cut her off after the recent incident. As for Grandma, she ended up isolated by the neighborhood after deliberately endangering Zoe's life and trying to deceive everyone with lies and slander about me. She found out later that we had moved, but by then she had no way to contact us. With Penelope also gone, she had no one to rely on. So Grandma, lacking financial means, is apparently living a lonely, depressed life while draining Grandpa's inheritance. Whatever kind of future she faces from here on is no longer any of our concern. Oh right, Penelope said she wants to come visit sometime, I mentioned. Just the other day on the phone, Penelope invited me to have her over now that we've settled into our new home. Then let's go see her next month during the long weekend, Asher readily agreed. Zoe was also bouncing with excitement, saying, I want to go. I want to ride the plane, so we're really looking forward to it. When I see Penelope this time, I plan to tell her that she's getting a nephew. From now on, while watching Zoe grow up, I want our family of 4, including the baby boy on the way, to live happily together in harmony.